There's that moment when you first wake up where nothing quite makes sense. Like your brain's rebooting, and for a second you forget who you are, where you are, and what day it is. That was me this morning. Only when I opened my eyes, I wasn't alone in bed. My first instinct was panic, the kind that jolts you upright and sends your heart straight into overdrive. I whipped the blanket down, and there he was, Tyler, lying on his back, shirtless, dead, asleep. I blinked, trying to process it. His chest was rising and falling slowly, one arm draped across the pillow where my head had been. His hair was a complete mess, sticking up in every direction, and he had this faint smudge of red on his cheek. Lipstick? No, that was definitely from me. I looked down at myself. Still in boxers, thank God. But my shirt was gone, and the faint scent of whiskey and cologne clung to the sheets. I could feel the ache in my thighs and the dry taste of regret on my tongue. What the hell happened last night? I swung my legs out of bed, rubbing my hands over my face as everything slowly started clicking into place. Tyler was my coworker. Well, technically, he was my team lead at the agency. We weren't close. At least, not like this. I mean, we got along, sure. We'd gone out for drinks a few times with the others, shared the occasional smirk over Slack messages during long Zoom meetings. But we weren't friends. Not in a way that explained why he was in my bed, looking like a scene from a morning after cliché. Shit, I muttered, heading for the kitchen, praying that caffeine might fix this mess, or at least take the edge off. It was when I was halfway through my second mug of coffee that I heard him stir. Hey, his voice rasped from down the hall, hoarse and low. I froze. Hey, I replied, carefully. A pause. Then his voice again. You really don't remember last night? I turned slowly, the mug tight in my hand. He was standing in the doorway now, wearing just his jeans, button undone, like he'd gotten halfway dressed, and then gave up. His chest was still bare, a faint red mark on his collarbone. Another from me? I remember we went to Brianna's thing, I said slowly, searching his face. The rooftop party. We had drinks. A lot of drinks. He nodded. And then? I hesitated. You offered to call me an Uber. Tyler gave a small smile, tired but not unkind. I did. And then you said Uber was for quitters, told me you were fine, insisted on walking me home instead. I winced. That sounded like me. And then I trailed off, the words drying up in my throat. He walked further into the room, leaning against the counter, looking far too comfortable for a guy who just slept in my bed for the first time. We kissed, he said plainly. I felt my face go hot. Seriously? Yeah. He scratched the back of his neck, looking up at me. In the hallway, before we even made it inside, there was a long silence between us. I could hear the hum of the fridge and the distant honk of a delivery truck down the street. And after that? I asked, barely above a whisper. He shrugged. Well, you kind of pulled me inside, took your shirt off, started talking about how you'd always wondered what I tasted like. I groaned, setting the mug down with a soft thud. Please tell me I didn't actually say that. Tyler laughed. Really laughed. Not mockingly, but something else. A kind of surprised amusement, like he wasn't expecting any of this either. You did, he said. But you also asked if I was okay. Like, 4 times. I looked up at him, surprised. Really, he nodded. You said you didn't want anything weird between us, that you weren't trying to mess things up at work. Then you asked if I'd ever thought about it before. Us. I swallowed hard. And you said? Tyler tilted his head slightly, watching me closely. I said yeah. I stared at him, dumbfounded, replaying his words in my head. I said yeah. He didn't look embarrassed. If anything, he looked calm, like he'd had time to make peace with whatever happened between us, while I was still trying to connect the dots. So, I started, my voice unsure. This wasn't just some drunken accident? Tyler raised an eyebrow. Do you normally whisper sweet nothings and ask about long-term compatibility when you're drunk? I blinked. What? He chuckled. Okay, not literally. But you were open. Vulnerable. It wasn't just drunk talk. You said you'd thought about it before. About me. I didn't know what to say to that. Because I had. Way more than I should have. There was this one night, months ago. We'd stayed late working on a pitch. Just the two of us. He'd rolled up his sleeves, revealing those forearms that were way too distracting, and we'd somehow gone from debating tagline copy to arguing about movies over takeout. He'd laughed at something I said, leaned in too close. For a second, I swear I thought he was going to kiss me. But he didn't, and I buried the moment like a guilty secret. Now, looking at him, shirtless and totally unbothered, it felt like the world had tilted. You're taking this really well, I said finally. Tyler smiled. It's not that complicated, is it? We had a good night. You asked if it could be more. I said yeah, then you kissed me, and things escalated. My heart jumped. Escalated how? He gave me a look. You really don't remember? I remember bits, I admitted. Nothing super clear. Tyler stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint hint of my cologne on him. You were bold, he said. Kinda surprised me, actually. I folded my arms, trying not to look as flustered as I felt. Was I too bold? No, he said, voice low. You were exactly the right amount. I swallowed hard. We stood there for a second, the tension growing heavy again. There were 100 things I wanted to ask. What this meant, what came next, if he regretted it. But my mind wouldn't cooperate. Tyler. I began, unsure where the sentence was going. I know, he said gently. You're wondering if this screws everything up. I nodded. And if it does? I asked. Then we talk about it, he replied. Like adults? I exhaled, some of the pressure easing from my chest. You make it sound easy. Because it kinda is, he said, unless you don't want it to happen again. I looked up at him. I didn't say that, he smiled. Good. Another silence. This one different. He glanced down at the mug in my hand. You gonna finish that? He asked. You want some? I offered. I want something else, he said, stepping in even closer, his fingers brushing the hem of my boxers. My breath caught. Are you? He cut me off with a kiss. Slower this time. Less urgent than whatever must have happened last night, but deeper, more deliberate. Like he wasn't rushing this. Like we weren't just figuring it out. We were deciding something. His hand slipped to the small of my back, and for a second, I melted into him. Then I pulled back, blinking. Are we really doing this? I whispered. Tyler's eyes were warm, serious. I think we already are. We didn't make it back to the bedroom. At some point, I think we both realized that going through all the questions and overanalyzing wasn't going to help. The moment was here, standing in the middle of my tiny apartment kitchen, and neither of us wanted to lose it to doubt. Tyler kissed like he worked. Confident, focused, deliberate. One hand gripping my waist, the other tracing a line up my spine until I was pressed fully against him. It wasn't rushed, but it wasn't soft either. He wasn't testing the waters. He was already in, and I felt myself responding without thinking. By the time I found myself sitting on the edge of the counter, his hands resting firmly on my thighs, I'd all but stopped caring about the logistics of it all. Is this gonna make things weird? I asked against his mouth, breathless. Probably, he murmured, trailing kisses down my jaw, but I'd rather deal with weird than wonder. That shut me up. I grabbed the back of his neck and pulled him in again. Every inch of him felt warm, grounded, like someone I thought I knew but was only now really touching for the first time. It wasn't like I hadn't imagined it before, but the real thing? It was more grounded than fantasy. Messier. His stubble scratched against my skin. The way he breathed into my neck made my stomach twist. And there was something deeply human about the way he kept checking in without saying a word. Just soft touches and steady eyes. Eventually, he pulled back slightly, just enough to catch his breath. "You okay?" he asked, brushing his thumb along my hip bone. I nodded, blinking slowly. "This is insane," I said. "Yeah," he agreed, but not in a bad way. We ended up curled together on the couch under a thin throw blanket, neither of us quite ready to break the contact. He rested his head back, fingers trailing absent-minded circles on my arm. For a while, we just lay there, saying nothing. "So what happens Monday?" I finally asked. Tyler smirked, not opening his eyes. "We go to work. You sit on the left side of the conference table. I sit on the right. We pretend I don't know what your bedhead looks like." "Right," I muttered. "Professional." "Exactly." Another beat of silence. "But," he added, "we could also, I don't know, get dinner sometime. Not with the team, just us." I looked over at him. "Are you asking me out?" He gave me a half smile. "I'm floating the idea." I stared at the ceiling. "That's weird." "But good?" he asked. I smiled, finally relaxing into him. "Yeah, weird but good." He kissed the side of my head and mumbled, "Let's just keep this between us for now." Agreed. We lay there in that weird, wonderful silence. Two people who just broke every unspoken rule between them and weren't quite ready to admit how much they liked it. Monday hit like a slap to the face. Tyler strolled into the office like nothing had happened. Same smug coffee in hand. Same effortless morning to the receptionist. Same way he leaned over Rachel's desk and made her laugh within 30 seconds. And me? I was a mess. I kept staring at my screen like it owed me an apology, trying not to replay every second of what we'd done on Saturday, or the way he'd looked at me afterward. Soft, satisfied, almost domestic. I told myself it was just a one-time thing, that we'd both been buzzed, tired, emotionally vulnerable. Pick your excuse. But then I caught him looking at me across the bullpen, lips quirking like he was holding back a secret. "Hey," he said when we crossed paths by the copier. "You sleep okay Sunday night?" I didn't answer. Instead, I blinked at him and whispered, "So you're just gonna pretend that didn't happen?" His brow lifted. "Did I say that? You're acting like it," I muttered, voice low. He stepped a little closer. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to make my heart thud. "I told you," he said, eyes locked on mine. "I'd rather deal with weird than wonder." "Yeah? Well, it's definitely weird." Tyler nodded like he accepted that. Then he glanced around to make sure no one was watching and dropped his voice to a whisper. "You free after work?" I hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea. "Is it a bad one?" I didn't answer. He took that as a yes. That night, I stayed late at the office, using a tight deadline as an excuse to finish up some design work. But really, I was just waiting to see if he'd come back. He did. Around 7:15, I heard the soft knock on the glass of my office door. "Hey," he said, leaning in. "Want a ride home?" I nodded. We didn't talk much in the car, just soft music and the quiet hum of city traffic. When we pulled up in front of my place, I unbuckled slowly, unsure. "You coming in?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me for a long second, then nodded. "Yeah." Back inside, it was quiet again. Like Saturday had been on pause, and we were just unpausing it now. No sudden urgency this time. No breathless kisses the moment the door closed. He just kicked off his shoes, sat on the couch, and looked at me like he was waiting. "What?" I asked. Sitting beside him, Tyler tilted his head slightly. "I want to know what you're thinking." I swallowed. "I think this is risky. Yeah. I think I could get used to it." His eyes flicked to mine. "To me?" I didn't answer right away, just nodded. "I already am," I admitted. Tyler leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He looked nervous, really nervous for the first time. Not playful, not smug, just honest. "I don't really know what this is," he said quietly, "but I know I don't want it to stop." I felt something shift in my chest. Me either, I said. And just like that, it wasn't just sleepover or curiosity anymore. It was something else, something neither of us was ready to name out loud. Things didn't change overnight. Tyler and I were still discreet at work. We had to be. Our agency wasn't exactly the kind of place where an office romance went unnoticed, especially not between two guys on the same creative team. Too many open floor plans, too many people who lived for water cooler gossip. But behind closed doors, something had shifted. He started showing up more, sometimes under the pretense of picking up food nearby or just happening to be in my neighborhood. At first, I pretended not to notice, but it became harder to ignore when he brought over dinner without asking, or when he casually slipped off his shoes and made himself at home like this had always been the plan. Are we dating? I finally asked one night as he handed me a bowl of stir-fry and plopped onto my couch like he owned it. Tyler gave me a look. Would it be weird if I said yes? No, I said slowly. It would be weird if you said no. That made him smile. He didn't answer, but that night, after we'd eaten and ended up half watching some dumb Netflix show, he pulled me in closer than usual. His hand found mine under the blanket, fingers lacing together like it was nothing new, and he said, almost too casually, "You're not just some hookup. You know that, right?" I nodded, but inside I was scared, because I wanted this, way more than I should. It was the little things that started to hit me hardest. The way he texted me, "Good luck before big presentations," even if we were both in the same meeting. The way he remembered how I liked my coffee, even though I always changed it up. The way he'd touch my lower back when no one was looking, just a soft press of fingers to remind me he was there. I was falling for him. Stupidly. Quietly. Completely. But I didn't know how to say it. And I didn't want to be the one who said it first. So I didn't. One Friday night, after a long week, I invited him over for drinks. Nothing big. Just the two of us, the way it had been lately. We had music playing low, the lights dimmed, a half-finished bottle of whiskey between us. He looked good, tired, in that way people get when they've worked too hard but don't complain. His dress shirt was untucked, sleeves rolled up. He kicked off his shoes and collapsed onto the couch like he belonged there. "You ever think this is gonna blow up in our faces?" I asked, only half joking. "All the time," he said. "But I also think maybe it doesn't have to." I looked over at him. His face was serious now, more vulnerable than I was used to seeing. "I like being with you," he added. "Not just the intimate moments, not just the sneaking around. I like who I am when I'm with you." That hit me in the chest harder than I expected. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. I leaned over and kissed him instead. Slow, steady, like I was making a promise I didn't know how to voice. He kissed me back, then whispered against my mouth, "Let's not screw this up." We kept things quiet, not out of shame, at least not for me, but more like we were guarding something delicate, new, like if we opened it up too fast, the whole thing might fall apart under everyone else's opinions. But secrets get heavy. And eventually, someone always finds out. It happened on a Thursday, mid-afternoon, fluorescent lighting humming above us, when Jenna from HR stopped by Tyler's desk to talk about some internal review. I was across the room trying to focus on a campaign concept, but my eyes kept drifting toward them. Then she said something, I couldn't hear what, and Tyler laughed. And he looked over at me. Not in a casual way, not in a work-appropriate way. It was the kind of look that lasted just 1 second too long, with a half smile that said too much. She turned, followed his gaze, then looked back at him with a raised eyebrow. And just like that, I knew. She knew. That night, we sat on my balcony, with takeout containers balanced on our laps. It was cool out. Not cold, but enough to make us sit closer. "So," I started, "you think Jenna's gonna keep her mouth shut?" Tyler didn't look worried. "Even if she doesn't, who cares?" "I do," I said. "You're the lead. I'm technically under you, he snorted. Don't say it like that. You know what I mean. I muttered, shoving a forkful of noodles into my mouth. Tyler leaned his head against the railing, looking up at the stars. You think people will talk? They always talk. Let them. I looked over at him. He was calm. Too calm, like he'd already played the scenario out in his head and decided it wasn't worth worrying about, but I wasn't there yet. I'm not ashamed of you, I said suddenly. He turned, surprised by the edge in my voice. I've worked so hard to be taken seriously. I don't want this to be what defines me. Some whispered office romance. Tyler studied me for a second, then set his food aside and leaned forward. Look at me, he said. I did. I'm not hiding you, he said softly, and I'm not asking you to hide me. We're figuring it out. That's allowed. I exhaled, tension leaking out of my shoulders. I know. He leaned in and pressed a kiss to the corner of my mouth. Let them talk, he whispered. They don't know the good parts. I smiled, despite myself. The good parts? Like how you pretend to hate pineapple on pizza, but always eat the last slice. Or how you hum when you're concentrating. Or how you sleep with one sock on for some reason. Okay, wow, personal attacks. I laughed, pushing him lightly. Tyler grinned, brushing his knuckles down my jaw. Just saying, if people want to talk, let them. I'm not going anywhere. It hit me then. Not like a lightning bolt, but something quieter, steadier. I was in love with him. And even if I couldn't say it yet, I didn't need to. Not tonight. A week later, it happened. We were the last two at the office after a late pitch meeting. Everyone else had cleared out. The lights were half dimmed. The cleaning crew had started working through the top floor. Tyler came over, leaned against the doorway of my office, and watched me for a few seconds before saying it. I told Jenna. I looked up from my laptop, brows furrowed. You what? She asked. I didn't lie. I blinked at him. You didn't think to maybe, I don't know, run that by me first? Tyler stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. I get it. I should have asked. But I'm tired of pretending. I stood up, the chair creaking behind me. This wasn't pretending. I know, he said, softer now, but I'm tired of walking past your desk like I don't care. Of acting like I don't think about you every 5 minutes. Of going home to my place alone and wondering if this thing between us only lives in the dark. That last part landed hard. He wasn't being dramatic. He was just done hiding. And honestly, so was I. I don't know how people will react, I said, voice low. I've worked here for 3 years. I've finally earned some respect. I don't want to lose that. You won't, he said, stepping closer. And if you do, then screw them. You've earned your place, and so have I. We don't owe anyone an explanation. I nodded slowly. He reached for my hand, not shy this time. I like being with you, he said. I like waking up beside you. I like the way you steal all the covers and then deny it. I like that you talk in your sleep. I like all of it. You like that I talk in my sleep? Only when you say my name, he grinned. I groaned, hiding my face in his chest. You're the worst. I'm serious, he murmured, wrapping his arms around me. I don't want to go back to before. I stayed like that for a while, arms looped around him, face pressed to the soft fabric of his hoodie, listening to the steady thump of his heart. Me either, I said finally. We stood there, 2 guys in a glass office at the end of a long workday, hearts out in the open for the first time. No pretense, no hiding. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And I was all in,